effort is underway to lower the cost of prescription drugs and cap insulin prices. Wisconsin's U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin is a co-sponsor of legislation capping the cost of insulin and has also been pushing for drug manufacturers to lower pharmaceutical prices. We've reached out to Senator Ron Johnson's office for comment, but have not heard back. And joining us today to talk more about these issues is Senator Tammy Baldwin. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get right into the Affordable Insulin Now Act. We know prices have been increasing steadily. It seems every year we see those dollar signs kind of creep up, especially for the cost of insulin. Right now for diabetics, it's estimated that it costs $6,000 a year out of pocket for them. So what does this act do now to keep money in Americans' pockets?
Well, the bill would actually cap out-of-pocket costs for those who rely on insulin to $35 a month. You were just noting that the average diabetic spends over $6,000 out of pocket per year on their insulin, let alone the other supplies they need to maintain good health. And one shouldn't have to choose between putting food on the table and affording life-saving medication or other really difficult choices. And so this caps the out-of-pocket costs for people with type 1 or type 2 diabetes for their insulin. I might note, though, that this is a medication that has been around for 100 years, and there just seems to be no apparent reason for the price spikes we've seen, except perhaps the makers of insulin just know that they can with impunity. So this is really vital legislation for people who need insulin.
And as you mentioned, these are life-saving prescription drugs that these people need to survive. And I looked a little bit at the legislation, and it looks like it's got wide support for Democratic senators. Where are you seeing, is there bipartisan support? Are you seeing Republican support behind this to get this through to the next step?
Well, not yet on this bill, but I will tell you that the introduction of this bill has prompted bipartisan discussions, and we are hopeful that we will be able to come together on something so basic as helping people afford their insulin. You know, I want to reflect on the fact that in the United States, we pay 2 to 3 times the price for prescription medications of all types than most other wealthy nations. And that is because in most other nations, their healthcare system negotiates with the big pharmaceutical companies to lower the price. We don't do that except for the VA in the United States, and that needs to change. So I've long championed Medicare negotiations with the big drug companies, and think that that is very much a companion step. But I think it's really appropriate given that almost 10% of Americans have one form of diabetes to start with insulin.
And you make a very good point, and I was going to bring this up as well, that not only insulin prices have increased, but prescription drugs have also increased. There was a study out of Minnesota that I want to tell you about here that talked about how name brand drug products have increased by 5% just since January of this year. So where does it end, especially as the pandemic we know has put a lot of strain on people? Their money is tight. How do we stop this?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of measures we need to take. One is greater transparency and accountability for both the pharmaceutical manufacturing companies, the big drug companies, but also the middlemen, which are called pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. They cite proprietary reasons for not disclosing any of the activities or contracts they have with the big pharmaceutical companies to distribute their drugs to hospitals and clinics and other prescribers. And because there's such secrecy, we have no insight into whether any of these price spikes have any justification at all. So I think combining the ability of Medicare to negotiate for better prices with transparency would be the way that we can crack down on this, lower prices for prescription drugs, just like every other wealthy country enjoys, and have a better starting point moving forward.
So we definitely got a long road ahead. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.